Hey everybody, welcome to the GMG review. Today we're taking a look at Warhammer 40,000, Arks of Omen, Abaddon, the latest campaign expansion and new game style for Warhammer 40k from Games Workshop. Now this was kindly sent along as a complimentary review copy, and as it's a campaign book, kind of signals the end of an edition usually, as codexes start to come out and or stop coming out and we wind towards the end of everybody getting an edition codex. These things start to kind of appear. And this one's kind of exciting. It's been released in conjunction with the Boarding Actions terrain set. And while it's not so much a campaign book, we're kind of used to these books containing new ways to play certain armies that are featured in a war zone. This is a completely new way of playing Warhammer 40k. And I'm actually pretty pumped about it. Now, I was pretty clear that I wasn't as big a fan of the Boarding Action terrain when it came up for Kill Team. I was a bit disappointed of it, or with it, and to give you the short story long of that review, you can see it up in the cards if you want. It came down to making space dungeons should be fun, physically pulling them apart and putting them together should be fun, and it was frustrating to build and put together. This features the same terrain minus the expansion sort of Kill Teamy sprues, and the same sort of like layout format where you follow a key to do it. But it does include full rules for converting a Warhammer 40,000 into a spaceship battle, and that's the part I'm excited about. So the short story long version of, or I guess the long story short version of the Arks of Omen themselves, Abaddon meets a new chaos power. He's kind of like the infernal machinator, the god in the machine. He does all of the armaments, equipment, and machine stuff for the forces of chaos. He's not quite a supreme demon prince. He's not quite a chaos power. He's somewhere in between. He strikes a bargain with Abaddon aboard the Vengeful Spirit to back him up. And he wants to basically become a chaos god, make a deal with him. And the Arks of Omen are his creation. There's been lots and lots and lots of stuff on Warhammer community about him, so I'm not going to do too much more about him. I was a bit surprised his data slate isn't in here. There's no rules for him. It kind of just introduces him and goes through a whole bunch of background as to what the impact of that is on the current Great Crusade and what's going on with Abaddon himself. So as the Bale fleet of Warmaster Abaddon and Vashtor the Archifane, this new demon prince, or not demon prince, this new demonic power basically, tore their bloody paths across the galaxy, world after world was plunged into cataclysmic conflict. And so the idea here is that now we're fighting aboard spacecraft because spacecraft are becoming a key feature. There's lots of cool color sections featuring boarding actions, different armies, beautiful new Cadians all painted up. I did have a look through to see if I could spot anything new in the color section. I don't think I did. I mean, obviously there's the new Demon Prince, the new Demon Prince we've seen in the AOS box, done up as a 40k Demon Prince, which is pretty cool. There's lots of Chaos Cultists. I'm not 100% sure if these are new or not. They kind of look like the ones that just come with the Word Bearer, Arch Heretic, whatever his name is. I don't think anything else are super new. I love this guy though. The Black Legion Demon Prince is badass. He's very cool looking. And I kind of hunted on the background to see if I could find anybody. But it all looks like stuff we've seen before. I didn't spot anything. If you guys in the comments do, let me know. But it all looked like stuff I was pretty familiar with. Obviously, there could be some like minor new adjustments in here, but there's Scions and Ogryns. They're all the same. It's always back here. I'm kind of looking to see if there's somebody new. But I didn't spot anything in particular. All right, so the rules. Now, I am doing a Let's Play today, which you'll also be able to see up and online, and you can watch a game happen between me and Nick, and that's going to be probably a more practical walkthrough for people, but I'm going to give you the sort of like Cole's Notes version of how you play a boarding action. So the first things you need to know, you chuck everything you know about 40k out the window. It uses the core mechanics of the game and the core codexes for the game. But you get rid of all your stratagems, and you get rid of all of your enhancements, and you get rid of all your CP and battalion stuff. This uses a bespoke method of building a boarding party and taking them into a Space Hulk. You do need a set of boarding action terrain. I'm sure you can find like some kind of, you could make obviously a version that would fit this as well, but it's all keyed in the mission pack to use the boarding action terrain pack, but you do get exactly what you need in that box. You can also use scatter terrain. I'm using some scatter terrain from a previous Kill Team expansion in my videos to kind of zhuzh it up a little bit, but basically what you got in the core missions is just walls and the floor, and that's what comes in the boarding action box. It gives you some definitions. So zones are a square on the boarding action tile. Doors are the only other sort of defined terrain feature, and it uses the action system from Warhammer 40k in order to interact with the battlefield in like a meaningful way and set certain things up. Now everything's coded. They did do a better job of the map itself, showing how to put things together. It is fully compatible with Crusade, but it does give you the caveat here that if you're going to play Crusade, you want to kind of think about your agendas and whether or not they could possibly be done, and maybe pick them appropriate for the game you're about to play. There is a Battleforge CP bonus and stratagems. In boarding actions, each player starts with 1 CP, and everybody gains 1 CP in either player's command phase back and forth. Players cannot use any stratagems other than the ones in this book, but there are planned stratagems. Apparently all the Arks of Omen expansions coming forward are going to feature specific units and stratagems and stuff for like every codex, well, not necessarily every codex, but all of like the key featured codexes, to add new things they can do, new actions, new stratagems, and new enhancements as well. This one is any army can use what's in this book, and it replaces what's in your codex. When you measure a lot like in Kill Team, you got to measure on all the walls. If a door's not open, you can't measure through it, but if it is, you can. Visibility, you cannot draw line of sight through a hatchway, closed hatchway, a model that's not part of your unit, or a wall. So you can't see through other people, your friendly models and stuff too. If it's open, you can draw a line of sight through. If you can draw a straight line to every part of a model's base from any part of an observing model's base, as described above, that model is fully visible. Otherwise, they're not, and you get cover. So if you can't see a whole base from the closest point or any point on your base, then that model gets a cover save. Now, allocating attacks. If it attacks a ranged attack, then the attack must be allocated to a model that's visible to any model in the shooting unit. If there's no such model, the attack sequence ends. If that attack is a melee attack, the attack can be allocated to any model in the target unit. Note this does not have to be a model that's within engagement range of the attacking models. So no poking one model out and then taking casualties from behind. You have to kill visible models first. That's really important and a different distinction from regular 40k. Covers, if you can't see an entire model's base at any point, then you get cover. Cover's very generous in boarding actions, and it kind of slows down how deadly range attacks can be. And weapons that can be fired even if the target's not visible. So some things like mortars, you don't get to use them. You have to be visible. You can't shoot mortars up through ceilings, basically, is the general rules. These are some sort of core visibility and allocating attacks changes to the core mechanics. A movement open hatchway. Models can move through open hatchways without hindrance, even if their base couldn't fit through it. The idea is you squeeze through, and the hatchways are more representative of like a portal to draw line of sight through. You don't have to worry about the base size, and there's no units available in a boarding action that wouldn't be able to fit kind of logically anyway. Objective markers are 40 mil, but you only hold or contest it if you're within 1 inch of it. At the start of the battle, every objective marker on the battlefield is contested, and so is not controlled by either player unless otherwise noted. A player will control a marker at the end of any phase if they have more models in range than their opponent. And then which fire psychic powers can only affect things that are visible. Charging, you have to be in line of sight to charge, so no charging out of line of sight. Heroic interventions, units eligible to perform a heroic intervention and can do so if the enemy is the closest unit visible to it, so you can't heroically intervene around a corner. And then pile and consolidation moves. In boarding actions, each time a unit piles and or consolidates, the first model moved must end its move within engagement range of at least one enemy model. And each time a model makes a consolidation move, it must end that move within engagement range of a model that's visible to its unit when it started the move. If it's impossible, no models in the unit can make a pile or a consolidation move this phase. We did mess that up a few times with consolidation, because models weren't visible to the unit doing it. We went towards closest ones. We didn't realize that they couldn't be ones that are further away, and we had some movement that probably shouldn't happen. Didn't make a huge difference, but worth noting. And then actions. Now these are actions available to any boarding party. The first one's secure site. If you have the OBSEC rule, so if you're considered an objective secured unit in your army by being battle forged, then you can perform this action at the end of your movement phase, and it's completed at the start of, or the end of your next command phase. As long as you still control that objective, it continues to be controlled even if you move away from it. So this one's really, really important because you have a small number of units in the army. So having OBSEC units move through the spaceship and basically secure rooms and then keep moving is really handy. The second one, set Overwatch to the end of the movement phase as long as you're eligible to do an action. And you count it as overwatching. So there's no Overwatch stratagem in this game. You have to take the action to set Overwatch. So basically you can move and then watch a corner. And this is really important because the line of sight is really broken up in this game, and is like a core mechanic basically that people can set up to fire when people come through. Now you can set an Overwatch to fire if someone ends a charge move in range of you in line of sight, and you can target them. But you can also fire Overwatch against any unit that ends a normal move or any kind of move in line of sight of you during the movement phase. it will trigger an Overwatch attack, and it's resolved just like regular Overwatch, where you only hit on 6s. Now, some units and rules allow you to hold steady. If a model makes an Overwatch attack, it's on an unmodified 5 or 6. So you can hold steady, and there's certain enhancements you can take for your Warlord and stuff too to let you do that. Set to defend, you get +1 to hit, which is the same type of action as set to defend if you're in cover, but you have to do as an action in this game. And then operate a hatchway. One or more units from your army can perform this action at the end of their move unit step in your movement phase if they're within one of a hatchway. This action can be performed by any unit that is not within engagement range of enemy models, even if that unit's being affected by a rule that would normally prevent it from performing actions. You can always open a door, basically. The action is completed at the end of your move if there's no enemy models within one of the hatchway. And remember, they can be within one on the other side, but because you can't measure through a wall, they're not within one of the unit performing the action. What that can mean, though, is at the end of that movement phase, then, after the action is performed, it opens immediately. And models could be immediately in engagement of each other, and neither side counts as charging because the door opens, you're just both standing there on the other side of it. So you can pop a door and be in melee, basically. It's very important that it happens at the end of the move, though, so it means you can shoot and charge through it afterwards, but you can't continue a move. There is an enhancement that lets you do it at the start. And then right now, there's only 3 stratagems. This is my favorite part about this so far because there's not like 1,000 million things to remember. It's just command reroll for 1, counter offensive for 2, so after someone's fought, you can interrupt, and then insane bravery for 2. Once per game, you can automatically pass a morale check. So great. Actually, sorry, it's not once per game, it's all the time, it's for 2. And you actually end up with a significant amount of CPs in this game because you start with 1, and then you're getting 2 per round. In the first turn, you're not usually interacting with each other, so you kind of start the engagement part of the game on turn 2 with like 3 CPs. It's very hard to be out of CPs early on. There's also an underdog bonus if you're ever down by 30 or more points, because it's hard for some armies to get to like a flat 500, which we'll get to later. Then you get a bonus CP, you get 1 instead of 2 at the start of the game. And then enhancements. In boarding actions, you cannot use any Warlord traits or relics. Instead, when you select a boarding patrol, your Warlord can be given a single boarding action enhancement from those listed below. And remember, as we get to it later on, you're only going to have 1 character who will be your Warlord, so these can be given to them. Superior boarding tactics, you start with 2 CPs instead of 1 in the generate command points of the first turn, or sorry, before the battle. Close quarter killer, each time you make a melee attack, reroll the wound roll. Defensive linchpin, I love this one. While a friendly unit's within 6 of the bearer, each time a model of that unit fires Overwatch, they can hold steady, so they hit on 5s instead of 6s. Big deal in this game. This one's also a big deal. Expert breacher, the bearer can start to perform operate hatchway action when they're selected to make a normal move as opposed to the end of the move phase. So they can start next to a door, open it, and then move through. And other units can as well because it'll be open then, which is a big deal. If they do so, that action is completed immediately, and they cannot perform that action again this turn, so you couldn't open 2 doors during a turn. They caught that one out. Note that if there's any enemy units within one of the hatchway, that enemy unit can attempt to prevent the action from being completed as normal. Regardless of the outcome, the bearer still cannot perform the operate hatchway action again this turn, because you can basically hold the door closed by rolling off. Personal teleporter, when the bearer arrives from strategic reserve, you can set this up wholly within one of your entry zones, or anywhere in the battlefield that's more than 9 inches away from enemy models. So if the mission uses reserves, or if you decide to use reserves, this person can just show up anywhere. And then a trademark weapon, when you select this enhancement, select 1 weapon that is equipped by the bearer and make note of this in your army roster. Increase its strength and damage characteristic by 1, and the weapon's considered a relic for all rules purposes. So those are all that are available to you. All right, so let's get into the composition part. So mustering a patrol. It has its own detachment. So you start your army roster. You can have 0 to 1 HQ, so you don't have to have an HQ. Up to 3 troop choices and up to 3 elite choices. No fast, no heavy, although there is hints on Warhammer Community that certain armies, when they get their expansion books with more stuff, might be able to have like eligible units, even though they're fast and heavy, count as something else to be able to show up. Like, it doesn't make any sense the orcs can't use for like flash kits, because those are literally space pirates. They're freebooters. They should be able to be in a spaceship boarding action. Just from a background point of view. A boarding patrol army is always used, composed of a single boarding patrol detachment, as we'll have 500 points to spend on units or add to it as described below. So first you select a faction that's not Imperium, Chaos, Eldari, or Tyranid. You cannot include a unit from your boarding patrol unless it's in the faction keyword, and your choice of faction may include additional rules, restrictions, or exceptions that apply when mustering a boarding patrol. Selecting sub-faction rules, selects all sub-faction rules for your boarding patrol, and write down those choices in your army roster. This includes selected sub-faction keywords, any rules that were determined by your choice of sub-faction, like chapter tactics, obsessions, doctrine, stuff like that. So you get that stuff as normal. Select units. So when you select a unit, unless the boarding action rules for your chosen faction say otherwise, you cannot include any models in a boarding action army that have any of the following keywords. So unless the boarding action rules for your faction, so that means the ones that come later on. No one who is a monster, vehicle, jump pack, cavalry, biker, or fly model, which means like no battle suits, none of that stuff. No jump pack troops, none of those guys get to show up. A boarding action can only include one character model. So even if you're taking like a lead choice character, like an apothecary, you only get one, no matter what. Unless the boarding action rules for your faction rules say otherwise, if the minimum unit size is less than 5, so it's a 3-man, then you can only include up to a maximum of 5 models. And if the minimum unit size is less than 5, you can only include that unit in your boarding patrol if it is a minimum sized unit. So 3-man units, you can only take 3, you can never make them bigger. If its minimum unit size is 5, you can include that unit as a minimum size unit, or if it can include additional models, you can go up to 10. And if the unit size is starting strength 10, you can't go over 10. And you can't include any understrength units in your boarding patrol. Then you select your options that you have eligible and deduct your points. If you do not have enough points left, you can't add that unit to the detachment. And you select psychic powers if you have a psyker, and select any other rules if one or more units in your detachment has other rules that have to be taken, like litanies or powers of the Catan or whatever, you select them then. Although, I don't know why you get powers of the Catan, because you can't take monsters. So, what? Because I'm pretty sure they're monsters. They might not be, though. And then select your warlord enhancement. Select one model in your army to be your warlord. This model must be a model with the character keyword. If your army includes no character models, your warlord must be a unit champion from your army. Your warlord gains the warlord keyword, and if your warlord's a character, they gain the superior boarding tactics enhancement. If you wish, you can replace this with a different boarding action enhancement of your choice. So you can take the 2 CP one, or you can take a different one. You cannot select any other warlord traits or relics as for any models in your boarding patrol. And then determine your points total and write it down. So that's how you muster a boarding patrol. Now, how do you play a game? All right, there are a grand total of 11 missions in here, rolling a D33. You muster your boarding patrol. You determine the mission by rolling. I've played through the first 4 so far, up to power struggle. Then you read the mission briefing. You create the battlefield and place your objective markers. You form your boarding squads. And that is, if you have any units of 10, they have to divide down into 5. So no big fat units with like more than 1 wound bogging the game down. Your maximum unit size is going to be 5, and if it's less than that, then it stays that. Now you can see here all of the missions use a keyword, right? So the keyword is, or the key, sorry, is the same as in Kill Team, right? But thankfully, they've actually put little lines and stuff on here too, so you can actually visualize the terrain pieces as you go through and use that map. And that's how you create the battlefield and place the objectives. Then you form your boarding squads, determine attacker and defender to roll off, and you get those deployment zones, generate your command points, and start with 1. Deploy your armies. You alternate setting up, starting with the defender, going back and forth in your zones. Now, if you can't fit your models in one of the starting zones, which is just a square basically, the remaining models are placed as close to the zone as possible. And if a unit has a pre-battle rule that allows them to set up anywhere in the battlefield, they can set up wholly within 6 of its entry zone. So basically, you get an extension around that entry zone of 6 inches, like a little advanced deploy. If both players have units with abilities that allow them to be set up after both armies deployed, then you roll off and see which one goes first. Determine reserves. Any units in the player's army that do not start in the battle in the battlefield will start the player battle in reserve. This does not cost any command points to do. In the reinforcement stuff of a player's movement phase, that player can select one of their strategic reserves for each of their entry zones that has no models within it, and set them up in the entry zone. So as long as the entry zone is empty, then you can stick a unit in there from reserve. If one or more of the strategic reserves units has a rule that allows it to be set up anywhere else, then in each of that player's turns, one of those units can be set up on the battlefield as described by their rule that turn, instead of within an entry zone. Any units that haven't shown up by the first battle run are destroyed. And this is you can set up outside of it. Roll to see as the first turn, resolve your pre-battle abilities, begin the battle, end the battle, determine the victory by victory points with a maximum of 100. And so there's 9 missions. And those 9 missions are all kind of thematic. So there's like, you have to get through a junction point, which is a big long open hall. Deck sweepers, you're trying to kill each other and sweep the decks for each objective marker you control at the end. So you have to get people off of them. Regulate the flow, so there's like a bunch of pipelines. You're trying to hold adjacent A and B objectives to get extra bonus points. Power struggle, you're trying to hold ones that are connected, right? So if you hold the connected ones, you get 5 extra victory points for each one you hold that's connected to another one. And then it's hold 1, hold 2, hold more. Death in the dark, you're trying to lock down and seek sanctuary, so like controlling the lighting areas and the dark areas. Hull breach, where you're trying to stabilize the ejector markers. And each time you download a data packet, you get points. Control center, you get to the bridge. The furnace, which is down in the below decks. And they start to get more asymmetrical, you can see, as you go on. So like it's symmetrical side to side, but they're not exactly like a balanced map going forward for some of the later on ones, which I think is kind of cool. And the deployment zones can be scattered, so they're not. This one's radiation leak. The core starts to leak down, and that's it. So, and people can get radiation and like suffer from leadership, movement, and toughness going down. And that's it. It's a pretty concise book. So, what do I think of it? I've played 4 games. I gotta say, apart from the fact that I've jacked up my hands again, taking apart and putting together the boarding action terrain, and I've already broken a bunch of it, I really like this. It's a 500-point game that feels a bit bigger than Kill Team, but still feels like playing a full game of 40K. And you can watch the Let's Play to kind of get that impression. Now, certain armies right now I think are really good in this, mostly because certain armies are really good up close, and when you don't get to shoot them before they get to you. So far I've played against Orcs, and they are bananas. I played against Dark Eldar, they're also bananas. And I played some of my armies that felt really strong too. So I like that it gives units that I probably wouldn't normally take or give like a lot of credence to a new sort of like life. And you can paint a small army. 500 points isn't a huge ask in 40K. And you get to play like a satisfying 40K game. Like it's just 40K, but with different line of sight rules and leaning into the action mechanic, which I'm glad they're leaning into. I always thought the action mechanic should be more interesting than pushing buttons, and it started to get more interesting in like things like agendas you want to say Path to Glory, in Crusade, in the 40K version of Path to Glory, where you're earning experience and you're trying to like find things out or research things. And so I'm glad this exists. I'm excited to see what comes of it. It's pretty basic, but obviously this is the starter book. This is the product that any of the armies can use. And I don't know what it's going to look like when we start to see the expansions, like what kind of rules and extra actions and extra like things are going to be available to the other armies. And when you're still going to be able to compete just using this against the newer things that come out. That'll be my like, when I kind of form my full opinion of it. Right now, just using this book, super fun. Everyone's got a real flat availability of what they can do and what they have. And you're all kind of operating on the same book. I love throwing the stratagems out with the bathwater and no relics and stuff like that too. It's just nice, clean, simple 40K. As things get layered onto it, I mean, we'll see, but so far, so good. It takes core mechanics of 40K and repackages them for an interesting new experience that makes you feel like you're fighting in a close quarter space. Doesn't have to be a spaceship. Obviously, it's all themed to spaceship. You can be playing underground in a 40K dungeon. But I like that my units can open doors and set Overwatch and set traps and like do some more dynamic and interesting things than just sit across from each other and chuck buckets of dice until stuff's dead. So far, so good. Good job on Arks of Abaddon. I'm excited for more in this like series, and as we wind down 9th edition, I think this will be a cool expansion for the game. So big thanks for watching. We'll see you for more GMG reviews in the future, and thanks for GW sending this along. Go check out the Let's Play if you want to see it in action. Text now MASH. That's what we're doing. Hey there, I hope you enjoyed that video. There are tons of other games already recorded for you to watch. Click over to my channel page if you haven't already, and have a look through the dozens of playlists full of videos. I guarantee you'll discover a game you haven't seen played before. I put out new videos 7 days a week, and every day is themed to a different genre as I continue to explore the wider world of gaming. Of course, none of that's possible without you, the viewer, so click a like and subscribe if you'd like to stay on top of what's happening here daily. My 2 kids and I are massively grateful to be able to have the flexibility of this job so I can always maximize my time with them. If you want to support me continuing to put out this content, it's only possible because of my amazing backers on Patreon who support the studio, equipment, and model cost, as well as being how I make the bulk of my living. You can also help out by buying a t-shirt through Spreadshirt, a measuring gauge or widget from Death Ray Designs, or buying one of my games and supplements like Last Days, Gamma Wolves, and Blaster. As a way of showing my appreciation, patrons get early access to new games and supplements that I write throughout the course of the year. Huge thanks for watching, it really does help out, and happy gaming.